Welcome back to the mountain, folks. As you can see, we are not outside. We are in the kitchen on the mountain. For those that have been following me on Facebook and Instagram, and the rest of you should be, you'll know a few days ago I made bread for the first time. And it was, a couple people mentioned I should do a video on making bread. So we're going to do that. Just simple white bread. That's all we're going to do. Nothing fancy. First thing we got to do is get our yeast activated. So I'm going to put my water in my mixer. Recipe calls for 2 1/4 cups. And I'm going to go ahead and put my yeast in there, just Fleshman's Active dry yeast. This is not the quick rise, so we're going to have to wait about 10 minutes for this. So we're going to put that in there. And we're going to put in a couple teaspoons of sugar with it. And then we're just going to let it sit for about 10 minutes and let it bubble up. So we'll put a little bit of sugar in there for the yeast to eat. Mix it up a little bit. And now we're just going to wait. And when that starts to bubbling up, we'll know the yeast is good and it's doing its thing. So for now, we're going to have to wait. Okay, it's been a few minutes. We're bubbling nicely in there. We got some nice bubbles going. So now we can go ahead and add the rest of our ingredients to it. So when it's foamy, now we can add our sugar. We got a 1/4 cup of sugar. We're going to do a tablespoon of salt. Now, this is just a simple bread recipe I got off the internet. There's a ton of them out there. You can find them. They're pretty easy to follow. Anybody can really do this. Now, my 2 tablespoons of oil, I decided to use butter for my oil. Once again, if you're following me on Facebook, which you should be, you will know that I also made some hamburger buns. And for that, I also used butter for my oil, so that's what I'm using here too. Just instead of canola or vegetable oil, I'm just using butter. Alright, so we've put in our yeast, our water, our salt, our sugar, our oil. Now it's time for flour. Now, this recipe calls for between 5 1/2 and 6 1/2 cups of flour, and it says to put 4 cups in to begin, so that's what we're going to do. We'll put in 4 cups. We keep a little stick in our flour just to smooth it out. So when you get the cup, you can just... So there's 1. 2. 3. And 4. Now when I made the first couple loaves a few days ago, we discovered the taste. It's just amazing. Homemade bread, if you haven't had it. It's amazing. It's really not that hard to make. No, you're not going to save any money off what you're going to get in the stores, but the taste is just so much better. Now we're just going to do this. Let it go for a while. And then as that mixes through, then we're going to add more flour. I'll bring you over here in a minute to show you what it looks like as we mix it. All right, I'm going to get it says to do it in 1/2 cup intervals, but, well, we probably should, right? So let's get a 1/2 cup measure. Here's our 1/2 cup. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you over here so you can see what's going on in the bowl. So as you can see, it's mixing up nicely in the bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and add another 1/2 cup. So I will shut this off. Reach into our flour bin. We don't need to smooth that one over. We'll just dump a 1/2 cup in, start it back up. so we now have 4.5 cups in there. And we'll let that mix. Then this way I don't have to do any hand kneading. I just let the mixer do it. This particular recipe says knead for 5 to 7 minutes. I'm not gonna put it out on the top or anything. I'm just gonna go ahead and let my mixer knead it for the 5 to 7 minutes. I also want to tell you what I do is it tells you when you let your bread rise after you mix it, you gotta let it rise for an hour to put it in a warm, dry place, What I started doing is I preheat my oven to 175, which I've already done, and then I shut it off, and then I'll put the bowl inside. All right, I think we can go ahead and add another 1/2 cup. So again, we'll shut off the mixer. We'll add another 1/2 cup. So now we're up to 5 cups. The recipe calls for between 5.5 and 6.5. So we're probably going to have to do at least another 1/2 cup. So we'll let that mix through. And I'm going to let that mix, and I'll bring you back when I do another 1/2 cup. All right, I haven't added another 1/2 cup yet, but you can see how it's changing. So it is still sticky. You can tell it's still sticking to the sides of the bowl. So let's go ahead and add another 1/2 cup. We'll shut the mixer off. So now we're up to 5.5. The recipe calls for between 5.5 and 6.5. Just let that mix through. We'll slow it down a little bit till it mixes through a little more because we're throwing flour all over the place. All right, turn it up a little more. Then we'll let that mix through. And it may or may not be ready at that point. What you want is you want it to be pulling away from the sides of the bowl. And that's when you know you have enough flour. It's getting really close. Yeah, I can see where it's peeling away from the sides, but we're going to let that mix through. So we're going to let that knead for a few minutes, and if we have to add more flour, we will. And if that's good, it's good. I honestly don't remember if I'm at 5.5 or 6 cups right now. I'll know when I look through the video later, but for right now, I really don't know. So there we go. We'll let it mix up. It's doing its job. It's actually looking pretty good right about now. So we're going to let that knead through. What that does is it builds up the gluten. You can give it what they call the window pane test. So I'm going to set you back over and then I can show you these things. Alright, so we're still kneading our dough. It's going through. You're supposed to do what they call the window pane test. It's still a little bit sticky. You grab a little bit through and you pull it, and if it breaks apart, it's not ready. Like that breaks apart, so it's not ready. So the gluten hasn't built up yet. So we're going to keep going. We're probably going to have to add a little more flour to it. So let's add a 1/4 cup this time. We'll let that mix in, and we'll let it knead for a few minutes. It helps to build up the gluten. Alright, so we're just going to let that go for a few more. Alright folks, that's been going on for quite a while now. So now we can go ahead and we're going to give it what they call the window pane test. So you break off a piece and stretch it between your fingers, and if it doesn't break, like that, then it's good. So our bread dough has been kneading for quite a while, so it's pretty much ready to go. So now what we got to do, I'm just putting that piece back in. So now what we got to do, we got to put it in a greased bowl. What I do for that is I just take a bowl and I use uncooked, this regular spray, And I just make sure to get it all greased well. Okay, and now we can go ahead and take our bread out of our bowl and put it in that bowl, our dough rather. It all pulled out from the bowl. And then we'll put it in the ball, we'll put it in there, roll it around a little bit to make sure it's all coated with oil. Okay, everything, it's all coated. And then you're supposed to cover it and put it in a warm place. What I do is I take a dish towel that I have, I wet it in the oven, and I put, not in the oven, I wet it in the sink with hot water. And then I rinsed it out, and I put it in a bowl, put it in my oven, which if you remember I turned it on to 175, then I turned it off. So it's warm in there, it's got the moisture from the towel, and we let it rise for like an hour. So in an hour we'll come back and we'll go from there. It's been an hour. We've taken the bread out of the oven. We've preheated the oven. Here we go. We're going to put them in and bake them for about 30 minutes at 375. There we go. So in half an hour we'll come back, we'll yank them out, they'll be... I think we get fresh bread. Oh, we do. Ah, too bad we didn't have smell-o-vision. That looks wonderful. Oh yeah. So, our bread is done. It smells awesome. What I've got here is butter. I'm just gonna put some melted butter on the top. Adds a little bit of flavor, butter flavor, and you know, butter's like bacon. Everybody likes it. No matter what they tell you, they like it. It also softens up the crust a little bit. And you know, we like it, even though we like a nice hard crust, sometimes we like it soft a little bit so it's not as crunchy, or at least me, especially like for sandwiches. We gotta let it cool, and then we're gonna slice it up. And I got a little trick to show you there on slicing it up. Now we're gonna do that. So, there we go. Our bread is out of the oven. It's buttered. Let me tell you, it just looks amazing. So now I can take it out of my pans. And we're gonna set it on the rack to cool. And there we go. 2 loaves of bread, ready to go. Once they cool, we'll slice them up. All right, folks, well, the bread is nice and cool, so it's ready to cut into. Now, one of the things that we found with when we first made them was the difficulty in cutting them. Because when you try to cut it, it's hard to keep it straight, the knife straight, not turned in this way, and you get really funky shaped slices of bread. So looking around online for bread slicers, there is such a thing. A lot of them are plastic, and they have like gaps every so often so you can put the whole loaf in and then slice it. Well, I didn't find anything like this, but I decided to make this today. All I did was I took a piece of 1x6. It's commercial lumber. I apologize. I know I'm going to get all the hate mail for using commercial lumber. It's a 1x6, so it's 5.5 inches wide by 3/4 of an inch thick. So I just took 3 pieces, put them together like this, and can you see the little notches in there? I did 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and 1/8, which if you take the kerf of the knife and put it there, that'll make it 1/2 inch. Then I did 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch. So all you do is, somebody already cut into our bread. Huh. Okay, it was me. See, when you have fresh homemade bread like that, it's so hard not to cut into it and eat it. So we already had some. So anyway, all I'm going to do is I put my loaf of bread in my cutter like this, and I got it on the 5/8, which is half an inch plus an eighth inch for the inch of the kerf of the blade. And then you just put your knife here, right on the two pieces of wood, and just you hold the bread and just back and forth, like that. And it gets you a nice, perfect slice of bread. Oh, look, we have butter here too. Look at that. Fresh, homemade bread. Not homemade butter, sorry. And it is just the most awesome, awesome stuff. Homemade bread. We went through the other two loaves pretty quick. We'll be going through these pretty quick too. So, the other two loaves we used for everything that we used bread for. We made sandwiches out of it, just having bread. The French toast was unbelievable. It really was. And just, having bread and homemade bread in the house. It's awesome. It smells great. And you know what's in it. There's just a few ingredients. There's no additives. There's no preservatives. There's nothing like that. Downsides are you got to eat it quick because in a few days it will mold. Tells you something about the commercial breads out there where you can leave a slice out on the counter for a week and it'll be a little crusty, but it won't be moldy at all. So who knows what they're putting in it. This is so easy to make and it's so good. And it's good for you too. So that's going to be it. I thought I'd show you how I make bread. This is all new to me too. So tell me what I'm doing wrong. Please let me know. So subscribe to our channel, folks. Ring that bell for notifications. Like our videos. Share them. Tell everybody about them. And once again, as always, God bless from the mountain.